Welcome back. Before you start building and managing your applications on AWS, it's important to understand different ways you can interact with AWS platform. Understanding these methods is important because each one serves a different purpose and fit into different use cases. Whether you are managing resources, automating tasks, or developing applications, knowing when and how to use these tools will make your work on AWS more efficient and effective. In this session, I will walk you through three methods of interacting with AWS. First is AWS Management Console, and we have been using this so far in this course, which is a web-based interface to manage and interact with AWS. In addition to that, we have two other ways to interact with AWS as well. Second is AWS CLI or Command Line Interface. It is a tool that you install and configure on your computer, which allows you to access AWS services and automate them through your computer terminal scripts. Third method is SDK, which stands for Software Development Kit. It is used by programmers and developers to interact with AWS services directly from application code. If that doesn't make complete sense, don't worry, I will explain them in details. By end of this video, you will have clear understanding of when and how to use each of these tools to get most out of it from your AWS environment. I will also touch on some best practices to ensure you using this tool perfectly. Now let's dive into the details of each method starting from AWS Management Console. AWS Management Console is a web interface to interact with AWS services, and since it can be accessed through your web browser, it is easier way to manage AWS resources. Just log into your AWS account and do whatever you want. Think of it as a dashboard where you can see and control all your AWS services in one place. It's just like a control panel of a website, but for entire AWS environment. For example, imagine you need to launch a new EC2 instance, which is a virtual machine in AWS. With Management Console, you can easily navigate through the options, select your instance type, configure settings, and launch it, all through few clicks. This we will cover in EC2 section. I'm here just mentioning because with few clicks you will be able to launch virtual machine from AWS Management Console. One of the main benefits of AWS Management Console is its easy to use interface. Even if you are new to AWS, the console helps you manage your resources without requiring technical expertise. What's more, a mobile version of AWS Management Console is also available. You can install it on your phone and access almost all AWS services. Isn't that great? Now let's look at some advantages of using AWS Management Console. If you are a beginner, AWS Management Console is a right start as you can easily interact with AWS services. It's like navigating just another website. But as we have discussed, it's easier because of its very clean, step-by-step user interface. For all this reason, AWS Management Console is the best choice for performing administrative tasks as a beginner. Now, why only for beginners? Well, that's because some operations in AWS Management Console are manual and that takes time. Hence, it is not feasible to automate everything through AWS Management Console, and that's why we use Command Line Interface CLI. Now that we have covered the AWS Management Console, let's move on the AWS CLI or Command Line Interface. This method is perfect for those who want to automate their tasks and have more control through scripts. The AWS Command Line Interface CLI is a unified tool to manage your AWS resources. It's a command line interface that allows you to manage your AWS services using your computer terminal. This is tool you can easily install on your computer. It supports Windows, Mac, Linux operating system. You can do everything that you can do with AWS Management Console. Example, if you want to list all users in your account, then open a terminal in your computer and type AWS list users. It will get you list of all available users in your account. And if you want to delete a user, you could use the command AWS delete -user user name, then user you want to delete, and it will delete the user from your account. You can also combine these two commands to execute both tasks in one step, and that's the significant advantage of using AWS CLI over Management Console. You can automate tasks in CLI. Let's assume you have 50 users in your account and you want to delete those users whose name start with M. If you have to do that from AWS Management Console, you have to find each user and delete them one by one, right? But that's not case with AWS CLI. Here you can write a script and use above two commands to perform the same task, and this can be done quickly. Similarly, you can manage multiple AWS services using same script. To access AWS through CLI, you need to authenticate yourself just like you did for AWS Management Console. But here, instead of username and password, you have to provide access and secret key. Access key acts like username and secret key acts like password. If anything sounds confusing, we are going to install and configure AWS CLI in next session. Now let's look at some advantages of using AWS CLI. It's a great way to interact through AWS computer terminal, and it is excellent way to automate tasks and achieve infrastructure as a code. This is available for multiple operating systems like Mac, Windows, and Linux. It can be integrated with other scripts and tools for the more complex workflow. Now let's look at some limitations of AWS CLI. AWS CLI required little bit familiarity with command line operation and script. So if you are new to AWS, it could be little bit challenging for you, but it's not that hard. It has lack of graphics user interface, which might be challenging for the beginner. And last is it requires careful management of access and secret key to prevent unauthorized access, which we have already discussed in security section. Now we have explored AWS CLI. Let's move to more developer-centric method, a software development kits SDK. It stands for Software Development Kit or Dev Kits in shorts. As name suggests, it is a set of software tool and program used by developer to create applications. Now, if you are thinking that's similar to AWS CLI, that's not true, because you cannot use AWS SDK in your computer terminal. This is only used with or within your application code, which allow your application to interact with AWS services. SDK supports many programming languages like C++, Go, Java, JavaScript, .NET, Node.js, PHP, Python, Ruby, and many more. There is also mobile SDK for Android and iOS as well. Now let's understand this with the example. Assume you are developing a mobile application that will allow user to share their photo. For that, you will be using Amazon S3 as a storage. We will talk about S3 in detail in the another section. But in this case, your application need to interact with Amazon S3 service to store the images, as this is a storage service. You cannot use AWS Management Console or AWS CLI in this scenario because you want your application code to interact with AWS services. Therefore, you use AWS SDK and it allows you to access and manage your AWS services through your application code. You might already know the advantage of using SDK. It's perfect tool for interacting with AWS through application code. Well, now let's look at some advantages of using SDK. First, integration is great for interacting with AWS from your application code. Second, it's available for multiple programming languages, as I mentioned earlier. And third, automation. It's enable programmatic access to AWS services and facilitating automation within your application. Now, let's look into some limitations of SDK. First is complexity. It's required programming knowledge and understanding of SDK for various languages. As I said, SDKs are developed on different languages. So you need to know programming language if you want to use SDK. Second, dependencies management. So this SDK keep updating over time with the new software patches and the application code. So if you are using this SDKs with your application, now this is your responsibilities to ensure you are updating these SDKs over time. Third, learning curve. So there is a steeper learning curve for those who are not familiar with the programming language. And here it depends what you want to do with AWS Cloud. If you are not a developer, then you not really need to worry about the SDK. So I hope you understood these three methods of interacting with the AWS. By understanding this and utilizing these three methods, you will be able to choose the right tool for the right task, making your interaction with AWS seamless and efficient. In next videos, we'll look into AWS Management Console and see how to navigate to different services. See you soon. Welcome back. In the last lesson, we have looked into different ways to interact with AWS services. In this lesson, we will deep dive into AWS Management Console and understand what are the different ways to sign into AWS Management Console, how to create AWS account alias, how to select an AWS region in your AWS account, and how to navigate to different AWS services and its dashboard. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. To do anything in your AWS account, first of all, you need to sign into your AWS account. And the credentials you will use to sign into your AWS account will determine what type of access you will have in your AWS account. As of now, you must know there are two ways. One, you can use root user. Another, you can use IAM user. We have already discussed in the earlier sessions, but let's quickly recap. The root user is the user that was created when you first time set up your account. This root user has full access of your entire AWS account. This includes all resources and services, and it has highest level of the permission in your AWS account. On the other hand, you can also create IAM user. IAM user has limited access to resources and services based on permissions you assign to them. This allows for more control and secured management of your AWS account. This allows more control and secured management of your AWS environment. We will deep dive into IAM users in the later sections. Now, let's go to your AWS account and log in as a root user. To log in as a root user in your AWS account, you need email ID and password that you used while setting up your AWS account. Along with that, you also need multi-factor authentication that we have enabled earlier. However, in case if you want to log in with IAM user, you need username and password and then either 12-digit account ID or account alias. Since we neither have IAM user nor account ID and account alias, so let's go back and sign in with root user that we have already created. Here we are in AWS sign in page. We will enter email ID, then click next. Here we need to pass security checks by entering correct CAPTCHA and submit. I will give my password, then click on sign in. I have configured multi-factor authentication. I will have to enter unique code in addition to my password to able to log in. So I will enter the code and now I am logged into my AWS account. Now that we are in console, there are a few things we should quickly recap. One of them is account. Here you can see account settings which contains details of your account like contact information and alternate contacts for billing, operation and security. Understanding and maintaining this alternate contact details is very important for several reasons and especially if you are working as a solution architect. Let's understand them one by one. First is billing and notification issues. Having up-to-date billing contact information ensure that any notifications about billing issues, invoice generation or payment failures reaches to the right person promptly. So it's very important for you to configure correct contact information for the billing. This will help avoid service interruption due to unpaid bills or billing disputes. Now second is operational alert. Operational contacts are important for receiving notifications about service disruptions, maintenance windows and other operational issues. This allows the operation team to take timely actions to mitigate any potential impact on business. So once again, operational contact information is very important, and here you should give contact details, email IDs of your operational team or maybe operational head. Now last is security and incident. And again, this is very important because security contact information is important for receiving alerts about security incidents, vulnerabilities, and authorized access attempt to your AWS account. So, quick access to this alert allows security team to respond promptly to protect your organization's data and applications or resources. So, do remember, all these notifications and alerts and incidents goes to your registered email ID, and if this is severe, even they will call you. So setting up this correctly is very important if you are running any production workload in your AWS account. Now remember, we have also set up budget in the earlier session, and we will quickly check our billing dashboard. Click on billing dashboard. You will see the billing summary and other details including the bill of the current month, previous bills, budget control. Though I believe you have set it up budget and enabled the alert, still I recommend regularly checking this page to see if you have any unwanted bill. Now let's go back and create your account alias. Type IAM in the search box here and click on IAM. This is Identity and Access Management Service Dashboard. And as you can see on the right hand side here, you have account ID and below it is the account alias. Please note that account alias is same as account ID. So here is our 12-digit account ID, but remembering this might be challenge. So we are going to create an account alias that's much easier to remember. For that, click on Add Your ID, the Cloud Advisory 2050, and then Save Changes. That will create an account alias for you. You will use this ID and alias every time you will log in using IAM user. Now let's go back to home page again. To do that, let's click on AWS logo. Next to this, we have another drop down for selecting AWS region. So let's select a region for our account. We are currently in North Virginia and US East 1. This is region code. Every AWS region has a specific code and we use this code when you use AWS CLI and SDK. We will talk about this in upcoming sessions. We will discuss this in detail in AWS Global Infrastructure, and you can see that there are many regions and supported ability zones in AWS. Anyways, this is very detailed topics I will cover in the next section. When going to AWS Management Console, one of the first action you should take is to select AWS region. Choosing a region is important because it determines where your services and resources will be physically located and operated. This is first things you do when you create any new services, except for few services that not region specific. Let's walk through an example. Suppose you choose an Asia specific Mumbai region. Any services you create after selecting this region will be launched and operated within Mumbai region. Navigate to the region selector. On the right corner of AWS Management Console, you will find a drop-down menu and allow you to select a region. From the drop-down, choose Asia specific Mumbai. Once selected, the console will operate under this region. Now, any resources or services you create such as EC2 instance, S3 bucket or RDS database will be provisioned in the Mumbai region. Now important tips. I have seen a student always do these mistakes. So if you create some AWS resources and later cannot find them in AWS console, it means this most likely that you created in different region. So if you don't remember or select the region where you are creating these resources, there is chance you will be not able to find it. So to locate those resources, you need to switch to the region where you have initially created that. Now switch to the region. You switch the region, go back to the region selector and choose region where you believe resources were created. Once we switch to the correct region, your resources should be appears in the console. Well, now let's move forward and see how to navigate to AWS services. AWS Management Console provides multiple ways for navigating to individual services dashboard. In the search box on the navigation bar, enter the name of the service. You will see the result. Choose the service you want to search from the result list. For example, let's go to the S3 service. We can simply type in it and we get the list of all services that includes S3. In this case, we would be looking here just for S3, and if we click on it, it will take us to dashboard of that particular service. Next, we can also go back to the home page by clicking on AWS logo. Next, choose service to open a full list of services. Here, services are listed by category, then select the service that you want. For example, scroll down and select a storage category that includes AWS Backup, EFS, S3 and many more. I'll talk more about this one in the later modules. But this gives us a high level way of looking at the service based on category. Next is the recent visited tab. Let's go to the home page again by clicking on AWS logo. Here you can see the recent services I have visited within this console, including S3, RDS and EC2. So these are the services that I recently worked on. In case you only worked with a handful of services, this can be very quick way to simply click on this and go to the specific service dashboard. Well, that's all for this session, and this is very important for your upcoming sessions in the module. So I will highly recommend this to watch this multiple times. Get familiar with yourself with AWS Management Console, reasons and how to find and search AWS services. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in next session. Welcome back. We will continue our discussion on how to interact with AWS services. And in this demo video, we will install AWS CLI on our computer. Since I have Mac, I will go with Mac installation instruction. However, process remain the same for other operating systems including Windows and Linux. So let's go to the browser and find installation documentation. In this search bar, type install AWS CLI on Mac. You can also search for your operating system like install AWS CLI on Linux or install AWS CLI on Windows as well. We will open the first link, install and update latest version of AWS CLI. This page has installation instruction for all three operating systems including Linux, Mac and Windows. I'll go for the Mac and follow the process. Let's scroll down and here is the installation instructions. We need a .pkg file which is graphical installation. So I will download the pkg file from here. Once downloaded, open it and click on continue. Click on install. It will install the CLI on our system. Let's wait for everything to be done. The system is writing the files and finally installation is now successful. Since I don't need the installer anymore, I will move it to the trash. To verify the installation, I will open the terminal, go to the search option and type terminal. Then I will add AWS version. If you have running AWS CLI on your system, it should return the version of AWS executable. Let's wait for a little while. Hence we have got the answer of our command AWS CLI 2.3.2 which shows that everything has been installed correctly. Please download the CLI on your system as we will be using this in the future lessons. In case you have any issues, please have a look at this documentation. In next video, we will configure AWS CLI and look at how to interact with AWS services using CLI. That's all for this video. See you in the next lesson. Welcome back. We will continue our discussion on interacting with AWS. And in this video, we are going to install AWS CLI on our Windows machine. So it's going to be quite similar we did in the previous session. So on the Google, we'll go and type install AWS CLI. So instead of Mac, now here we will type Windows. And we don't need to log in here, at least for me. Now here we will open the first link, install and update latest version of AWS CLI. So let's click this. We have three options, AWS CLI install and update instruction for the 3 operating system. So in this case, we are going to open the window one and let's scroll down a little bit and we will click on this link to install MSI version of the AWS CLI. I mean AWS MSI for the installation. And it's going to take a couple of seconds. Now we see this got downloaded. Let me open it. And it's starting the installation. So now we need to do a couple of clicks here, like go to the next. We need to accept terms and condition. Then again click next. Again we'll go to the next and install. Now it's going to take a couple of seconds to install AWS CLI on our Windows machine. And now you see here, this is command line interface version 2. So I will recommend when you are installing that, make sure you are also installing latest version. And once it's complete, then we'll go again and check installation from the terminal. So for that, let's go and open the command line. So in Mac, we'll call it terminal. In Windows, we call it command prompt. So you see first search option, open it while it's getting installed. Now we see this got installed. Let me click here and finish this. It means AWS CLI is installed on our system now. Now very simple, as we have done in the previous session, type AWS, then version and enter. And if it installed correctly, we will see the version of our AWS CLI. Now we see AWS CLI 2.1610 is installed. So all set now. So that's all for this session. In next session, we'll install again this AWS CLI on the Linux version. Thank you so much. See you in next session. Welcome back. In this session, I'm going to install AWS CLI on Ubuntu operating system or Ubuntu machine. So again, process will remain same. But just I wanted to show you in case if you are using Ubuntu machine, how you can do that. As I don't have Ubuntu machine, so what I did on my AWS account, I have launched a Ubuntu desktop. So this is quite similar to you have your Ubuntu machine. So quickly here, let's check the which Ubuntu version I'm using. I'm using Ubuntu 22.04.4 LTS. Okay, so regardless of which Ubuntu version you are using, process will remain the same. So first thing first, we'll go to Google and type again AWS install CLI on Linux, and again we'll open the first link. As always, we know we have this 3 operating system instruction given over here. So this time we will select Linux one and scroll down, and here these 3 command we need to use, and this is very simple and again straightforward. So first command is to download AWS CLI on the local machine. So let's go to the terminal, and here I will do ls, and we see we have the different folders, but we don't have CLI here, right? So let's paste this, hit the enter. Now if you do the ls, we'll see we have AWS CLI zip file is here. Now next command is to unzip this file. Let's click this, copy this and paste here, and this is going to unzip our AWS CLI folder, and this will take some time, but meantime let's go ahead and copy this, and this script, okay, or this command is going to install AWS CLI. So let's go back to terminal once again, and it's taking some time. Okay, finally this is completed. Again let's do the clear screen. Now we'll do the last command. This is going to install AWS CLI, and let's wait for the couple of seconds, and then we again, once it get installed, we will check with the command AWS -- version. Now we see saying now you can run this command to see if AWS CLI is running or not. So let's type AWS -- version and hit enter, and now we see AWS CLI is installed 2.16.10 version. Perfect. So that's all. So again, it's remain quite same whether you are installing on the Mac OS or Windows or Linux. So that's pretty much I wanted to show you. See you in next video. Welcome back. We will continue our discussion on how to interact with AWS services, and in this demo we will learn how to use AWS CLI to interact with AWS account. So let's get started. Let me open the terminal on my laptop. First of all, make sure you have already installed AWS CLI. You can check by typing AWS version on your terminal and it will give you back AWS version. Second, we need to authenticate our AWS CLI to access AWS services. And as we have discussed, AWS CLI uses access keys for authentication. I will cover authentication and authorization in detail in identity and access management topic. But for this demo, let's go to AWS Management Console and create access keys. Here, click on Account, then Security Credentials. We are now in My Security Credentials, expand access key, and here you can create new access keys. Just to recap, access keys are important because they used to control authentication and authorization when we use AWS CLI and SDK to access our AWS account. Now, as a note, we will be creating access keys here. However, I'm going to delete these keys immediately after this demo. As we know, root user is most powerful identity in your AWS account. So we should not use root user access keys for our day-to-day basis, and we should delete as well. This is not good practice. Once again, we will learn this in details in identity and access management topic. For now, let's click on create a new access key, then show access key. Here we have both our access key and secret keys. This is what we'll be using to access our AWS resources through the CLI. Let's copy both keys in the text file. You can also download it as well by clicking download and allow. Now let's go back to AWS CLI and type in terminal AWS configure. Now first enter access key, then secret keys. Now enter the default region, and in this case we choose AP South 1. Wait, now let's remember from the previous session. So when we use AWS Management Console, we give username and password to log in to our AWS account. Same if you compare, for AWS CLI we have used access key and secret key to authenticate to our AWS account. Next, in AWS Management Console, before creating any services, we need to select AWS region, right? That's where physically our resources will be created. Same here in AWS CLI, we are also selecting the region where this AWS CLI will create resources for us. So this remain the same. I hope it's making sense. Next, we will choose the default output format. In this case, let's choose the JSON format. Once we have all of this in place, hit enter and you have successfully configured AWS CLI. That means we should be able to use AWS CLI to get information about your AWS resources. Let's quickly check it. We will run a command to list all S3 buckets in your AWS account. So let's type AWS S3 list and it will return a list of all the different S3 buckets that I have created within this account. If you don't have any bucket, it will return nothing. So quick review what we have done in this session. We have created access keys and secret keys for our root user And again, to remember, this is generally not good practice. Anyways, I'm going to delete it immediately, but this is what we have did. Then we have configured these access keys with AWS CLI for authentication and authorization purpose. Then we have also used AWS S3 list command to list all S3 buckets available in my account. So this is pretty much what we supposed to cover in this video. That's all for this. See you in the next lesson. Welcome back. So far in this section, we have been looking into different ways to interact with AWS account and access AWS resources and services. We looked into AWS Management Console, that is browser-based access, where we need to give username and password, or maybe for the root user email ID and password to log in into your AWS account. Then you can access AWS resources and services. Another way is installing AWS CLI on your laptop. Here it depends which operating system you are using. So in previous couple of sessions, we have installed AWS CLI on Mac, Linux and Windows machine. Once you install AWS CLI, then you need to configure it to access AWS resources, access key and secret key for the authentication and authorization. Then you can access AWS resources. Other way is using AWS SDK, so that is software development kit, that basically we use with our application code. So AWS SDK gives us access of AWS resources programmatically. So this is what we have covered so far. Other than that, there is another way to access AWS resources and services. Maybe you can guess, this is Amazon CloudShell. So Amazon CloudShell is AWS fully managed browser-based secure shell to access AWS resources. So if you are looking for convenient and reliable environment to access AWS resources using CLI, then AWS CloudShell is the one of the another option. Why did I say reliable? If you notice, so in last couple of sessions, we have installed AWS CLI on 3 operating systems, right? So again, you have to deal with the operating systems, right? You have to install CLI. If you don't want to care whether you are running Mac OS, Windows and Linux, and you want someone to take care of these sales from where you can access AWS resources, then AWS CloudShell is option for you. So this is mostly going to be the practical session. So let's jump on AWS Management Console and see how CloudShell works and how it will help us to access AWS resources. Well, now we are in our AWS account, and here on top corner you see this is CloudShell. So click on the CloudShell. Now you will see this is opening up, and it will take a couple of seconds, and what it's doing is creating a Linux environment for us. And now it's preparing, and here you see the IP address. Now this is ready. Now first things first, what we do to access AWS resources from command line, we need to install AWS CLI. But AWS CLI is already installed for us. How do we check? For that we can type AWS versions and enter, and we see AWS CLI 2.16 version is already installed for us. So first thing is done for us. You don't have to worry about this. Now second things, to test if this CLI is working, what do? We run any AWS CLI command to see if we are able to interact with AWS services or not. So simplest command what we can try, AWS, it could be a small, AWS S3 ls, and here we see we have 3 buckets in my account. So now we see we are able to connect with AWS account and able to see AWS services and resources. Now question comes, how is it working? Because when we use AWS CLI, we need to configure our access key and secret key, right? And how this is working. So this is something you can check with using this command, AWS STS get caller identity. Then hit the enter. Now you see here we have already a user, okay, and this user is Cloud Advisory, and this is the user I used to log in to my this account. If you see here, Cloud Advisor user is logged in, and here this user Cloud Advisor came to this particular account, this account ID, how? Using the assume role. So I have switched the role, then I came into this account. So I'm accessing AWS resources using this user. So this user credentials is used, right? So that is the first thing. Second things, when we either configure AWS CLI or we use AWS Management Console, then we also need to select AWS region where we want to create and manage AWS resources and services, right? So how does it work in case of CloudShell? So this is currently, you see my CloudShell is running in US East 1, right? And if you see here my AWS region selector, so I am in currently US East 1. So if you want to run this CloudShell in different region, then you can go ahead and select different region. So let's select the Mumbai. Now my CloudShell is switching to Mumbai region. Okay, now you see this got changed. So the second things what you need to do to change the region now again is preparing my CloudShell for the Mumbai region, and in moment we will see the unique code is AP South 1. Now this is clear. Perfect. Now again, if you want to see is this CloudShell is really running in this region, then you can use this command echo. Let me paste here, and AWS region. Okay, so we see we are in AP South 1. Of course you can see from here, but just to verify, okay, so we can test like this. Now here we can do pretty much what we can do with AWS CLI from your machine or your local system. Now let's try a couple of things. So first things first, let's try AWS S3 LS, and we see here we have 3 bucket, right? Now I want to see if there is any data is available in my CloudShell bucket. So for that we'll run this command, AWS S3 LS, then S3 CloudShell 121. This is my bucket, and hit the enter, and here you will see I have one data, one image, Praveen.jpg. Okay, now with this command what we can do, we can also, okay, now we see other than just listing services, even we can go inside the services and we can see what data is available. We can do pretty much a lot of things what we can do with AWS CLI from the AWS from your system. Now this comes with couple of more features, like if you go here in the action, select here, then we can create new tabs. Now you see here I have as of now only one tab. If you need multiple tabs, click here and open. Now we see we have the one more tabs. Now you can also split these tabs horizontally and vertically if you want, and other than that you can, okay, let me click this, close this. Other than that you can also upload files and download files from here. It's a very good feature. Let's see that. Now let's do ls here, and we don't see any file. Now let's say I want to upload one file over here. We'll go here, then upload, and then Praveen, this is folder CloudShell, and I will select that, and upload, and if we see it's uploading, it will take couple of seconds and then it will get uploaded. Now we see uploaded successfully. Let's go and then run this command ls once again. Now we see we have this image praveen.jpg. Now one thing's important here, this CloudShell is temporary. So as long as I am here, I can do anything what I want. But once I will close this, I will lose this session. Means everything what I have here, I will lost it. What command I have run. So second time when I come and then open this CloudShell, what command I have used, all will be get lost. But one good thing is here with the CloudShell, it comes with 1 GB storage. Means this file will be stay with me even if I will come to this terminal or CloudShell maybe after 1 week or 1 month, because we have got 1 GB of storage. In case if you want to copy this image to S3 bucket, okay, then we can also do that. So now let's do here. Let me run another command. Okay, AWS S3 CP jpg. Now we have seen this is here. Where we are copying in S3 CloudShell 1-to-1. Though there is already one image, right? But anyways, let's give it a try. And you see this is uploaded. So what it did, it's basically overwritten the previous file. So now this file from this cell we have moved to our S3 bucket. Perfect. Now let's clear the screen. Now from here, if you again want to download some data, okay, so let's say ls, we know we have the praveen.jpg file here. If you want to download on your local system, that we can also do. For that, what we need to do, first of all, we need to type pwd here, okay, then this is the path, okay, and then we need to copy this image. Click, then download the file. Okay, now we see here error. So this is not supported from, actually I'm using this Safari browser, so saying it's not supported. For that I need to either use this AWS Management Console from the Chrome, or I can open this CloudShell in the full browser. Anyways, no problem. Let me open it. And now again let's do the ls here. Now we see the image. Let's go and download the file, and we have to give entire path here, right? So what is entire path? So entire path, we need this path, okay, copy this whole path. Let me go again and download this whole path, then slash praveen praveen.jpg and download, and it's preparing the download and it will get downloaded. Okay, it's got downloaded. I can go here and I open it. Now you see this image is got downloaded. Perfect. Let's go back to the management console once again. Clear? Yeah. Well, now here we can also see all installed software. For that we run this command and let's list here. Now if we scroll up, we see AWS CLI is installed here. AWS Completer is installed. We also see Elastic Bean Stack, ECS CLI, and many more software like SAM. Here we see all installed software. So if you want to install more software other than this, we can also do that. As you see, AWS CloudShell is a reliable and convenient environment to interact with AWS CLI. So that's pretty much about AWS CloudShell. Just I wanted to show you how you can use AWS CloudShell other than AWS Management Console, AWS CLI, and SDK to access AWS account and interact with AWS resources. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in next session. Welcome back. in past couple of sessions, we have understood how to install AWS CLI on different operating system and configure with access key and secret key, then access AWS services and resources. Now, if you remember, I have said in the real-time customer, we will have the multiple AWS accounts. It could be 100, 200, even maybe 500. Now, as of now, we have just configured one access and secret key. Then what about other AWS accounts? This is something we can do with setting up profile for AWS CLI. So let's get started and see how to configure multiple profile for the multiple account and access AWS resources. Well, so this is my main account and first account which we use to configure our AWS CLI. Now I want to set up AWS CLI for the different account, and for that we'll go to the different account. So I will switch to the different account. There's another account called Epic Book. So I'm switching to the next account, and in this account let's go to the IAM, because we set up AWS CLI for the IAM user. So here in the user I have already one user, and this user name is Praveen Mac CLI. So first things first, what we need user, and for this user we need to create access key and secret key, and for that we need to click this user, and then we go in security credentials. So let's click here, and if you scroll down, you see I don't have any access key. So we are going to create one key here. So click key, and this asking what is the use case. There are the different use case. Okay, for me this is I'm going to use for AWS command line interface, AWS CLI, and then is saying you have to ensure consequences of creating AWS CLI. As I told, if you lost this access key and secret key and someone get access of it, then they can misuse it, right? So you have to ensure you will be rotating this key now and then, or maybe on certain interval. So we understood very well. So yes, we agree. Then click on next. Here is asking for the description. I can tell this is for demo. Okay, and if you are working for the real-time customer, you should give the purpose why you are creating this key. It could be maybe setting up the CI/CD pipeline, or maybe using something else. So you can give some valid description over here. Now next, click and create this. Now we see it's got created. We have access key and secret key. Now we want to set up this access key and secret key to our AWS CLI. Now let's go to the AWS CLI, and here first of all let's see, because I have already default AWS CLI is set up. So when I type AWS S3 ls, then I will see list of the bucket over here. Now you see I have so many buckets got created, right? So now let's clear it, and now I want to set up AWS CLI for the other account. But how do we differentiate this? Okay, and how do we know which profile we are accessing? So currently we are accessing default profile, and this is something you can test with a AWS command. Okay, this is called AWS STS. Let me paste the code over here. Then get caller identity. Click here, and now it will show. Okay, so this is user ID, and this is the account, and here this is the user, RAM user. Currently this is the default profile what I am accessing now. Okay, now let it clear, and now we are going to set up this profile for the new user what we have created. For that, we used to pass this AWS configure code, right? This command. Now here to create a different profile, we'll give -- profile, then profile name. So let's say I will call this Epic Book. Okay, and let's call this Praveen Mac. It's very odd name, but yeah, just let me give it for you to understand. Then give enter, then it's going to ask access key and secret key. So let's get access key from here, copy, we'll go on CLI, we'll paste this, then this is asking what is the secret key, let's copy from here and again paste it, then it's asking for the region, right? I'll give it AP South 1 and this is Mumbai region, and this could be a JSON, let it be the default one, and done. So now we have set up another profile called Epic Book Mac Praveen Mac, sorry. So now let's try to access details from this account Epic Book, right? So what we'll do, when do AWS S3 ls, then it's going to get details from of my S3 bucket list from my default profile. Now if you want to access details from different account, and profile is Epic Book account and Mac Praveen user, then we need to pass this profile details and hit enter, then we will see we have 3 bucket in this account, whereas in the previous account there was more bucket. So this is the way we set up multiple profile for the different account and different user. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover over here, and see you in next video.
Welcome back. In this session, we are going to configure Visual Studio Code with AWS CLI. So if you want to interact with AWS services and the resources directly from your Visual Studio Code, then you need to do a small configuration in your Visual Studio. Otherwise, if you have already configured AWS CLI on your local machine, then again you will be able to access AWS services from Visual Studio terminal. So let me show you. If you go here and type AWS S3LS, then we will see we are not able to access AWS services because my existing access key and secret keys expired, or it's not exist, it's not able to identify. But what if I go and type here AWS S3LS and hyphen hyphen profile and admin, then we will see list of the S3 bucket, because I have created AWS CLI profile with admin name. Okay, so I have multiple AWS CLI configured with a different profile, and one of them is admin. So using this I'm able to access it. Okay, so let me clear this. Now let's see how we can configure from the Visual Studio. So for that, what you need to install a toolkit. So extension, let's go here and type AWS, and then we will see AWS toolkit. So this is extension, we need to install it. So click here, and now we see it's got installed. So let me close this and restart it again. We should restart our Visual Studio Code. Okay, now this is done. Then what we need to do, let me close this. So we will go on AWS, and here you don't see any services, right? So what we need to do, we need to sign in to get started. So click here, and here we are going to configure our IAM credentials. So click here, continue. Now it's asking the profile name, so let's give this VS Code. So the way you have seen, right, I have used the admin profile, right? So I have created admin profile for some other purpose, but here we are creating a VS Code profile because we are going to interact AWS using Visual Studio Code. Now what I have did for that, again you need to create the system user in your AWS accounts. So let's go to the AWS account, and here I have already created VS Code user. So let's go here in credentials, we need to create the access key secret key, and let's select the CLI and accept this and go to the next and create the key. Now we got the access key. Let's copy this access key, go here, put the access key here, then we get the secret key as well, secret key, and continue. Now we see it's got connected, right? Profile is VS Code. This is what we have configured. Now we are able to see all AWS services, and within these services we can see our AWS resources. Click on the EC2. We see we have one EC2 instance is running in the Mumbai region, right? In the Mumbai region. Well, and why I'm able to access all these resources, because if you go here for this user, let's done this, and in the permission section you see I have added the administrator access. So as this user has the administrator access, because of this I'm able to access all AWS services. Now if you want to again interact with the CLI, it's very simple. Use here, instead of admin profile, you can use VS Code and hit the enter. Now we are able to see all S3 bucket, right? So this is very simple and straightforward. So just I thoughts of creating this a small video. So this will help you if you working a lot with Visual Studio Code and interacting with AWS services. Thank you so much. See you in the next session.
Hello students, welcome back. In this video, we will learn about the AWS regions, different availability zones, and the importance of regions and availability zones. So let's get started. Suppose you want to host a web application. For that, you would need your own data center, right? But now that you know about AWS and other cloud services, you don't need to set up a data center and can easily host your application in the AWS cloud. But let's assume you are still using an on premise data center. Now, here is a question: what if a disaster hits your data center? That's a valid question, right? Anything can happen, and since you own and manage the data center, you will have to figure out what you will do in such an extreme situation. One way to avoid a complete shutdown of your application is by running a second data center at some other location. So when one goes down, the other will be there as a backup. But maintaining another data center will double the hardware and maintenance cost. Don't worry, that was just an example, and AWS has a better solution to this possibility, which is AWS region. An AWS region is nothing but the geographic locations worldwide where different data centers are clustered. That means AWS maintains multiple data centers in one place. According to AWS standards, there must be at least two data centers in one region, and each data center should have redundant electricity, cooling, heating, networking, and connectivity. Once again, all these regions are connected through the AWS backbone network, which is basically a very high speed network. Each of these regions has different names and codes. These names are based on their worldwide geographical location. Geographic location means physical location like Mumbai, Tokyo, Frankfurt, North America, South America, China, South Africa, and the Middle East. These are some examples. Mumbai AP South 1. Mumbai is a physical location, right? So they call it Mumbai region and it has code AP South 1. Same goes for Singapore and other locations. Singapore AP South East 1, Sydney AP South East 2, Cape Town AF South 1. So when you have an AWS account, you can choose in which region you want to deploy your AWS services, whether you want to launch it in Mumbai or in Tokyo. This also depends on different factors that I will talk about going forward in this video. So, in simple words, you can say AWS is a cloud service provider and it has data centers around the world. As of now, There are 26 geographic regions with 84 availability zones across the world, and AWS keeps adding new regions. So by the time you are watching this session, these numbers may have changed. So you can look at the link provided in the resources section under this video and check the latest number of AWS regions. Let's move forward and talk about availability zones. Now, what are availability zones? It is one or more individually separated and distinct data centers with redundant power, networking, and connectivity in an AWS region. In other words, it is nothing but an isolated data center within a region. The only difference is that it has redundant power, networking, and connectivity. So each availability zone has a set of data centers isolated from other availability zones. So an availability zone is nothing but a group of data centers. And as per AWS standard, an AWS region must have two availability zones. So take an example of the Mumbai region. It has three availability zones. As we have seen earlier, every region had some specific code. Similarly, the availability zones also have corresponding code, which consists of a region code followed by the alphabet. If you remember, the Mumbai region code is AP South 1. And now let us see the code for the availability zone. Availability zone 1 has the code AP South 1A. And similarly, availability zone code 2 is AP South 1B, and the availability zone third has the code AP South 1C. I hope it's clear that region code followed by alphabet makes the availability zone code. So by far, we know every AWS region has two or more availability zones. Just like Mumbai has three availability zones, North Virginia has six availability zones, and so on. Now let us understand why these availability zones are important to us. So we know that one region consists of multiple availability zones. Here, let me tell you that every availability zone is not a single data center, but consists of clusters of data centers. Some availability zones can have two data centers, while others can have three or more. All these availability zones are located somewhere between 50 to 100 km apart. Coming back to the importance of availability zones, suppose if one availability zone goes down, the entire cluster of data centers would go down there. But data centers in other availability zones will continue working, and hence you will not face a complete shutdown of your application or website. AWS infrastructure is designed to ensure the high availability of the applications. And if you think, how does it matter to you? Let me tell you. Suppose you want to deploy your application in the Mumbai region. And as you know, the Mumbai region has three different availability zones. So the first thing you would do is launch a server in any of the zones as per your requirement. Once the server is launched, you can now access it over the internet. You do not need to worry about in which availability zone you have launched your server as long as you can access it over the internet. But suppose the availability zone in which you launched your server goes down completely. That means your application will also be down. But that's not it. You won't be able to access your application data as well. And if you don't have that data, you won't be able to revive your application. So to avoid such situations, AWS has availability zones. Let's take a look at the advantages of availability zones. The first benefit is the higher availability. When you design your applications, you make sure that you have put all your servers and databases in multiple availability zones. So if one goes down, you have another zone to cover for it. Second, if you remember, we talked about the distance between two zones being somewhere between 50 to 100 kilometers. Now suppose you have a primary database in one zone. In that case, you can have the replica of this database in the secondary zones. It is also possible to have synchronous replication between two databases. This will copy all your data in both the databases simultaneously. Now, if one zone goes down, we have another one to operate normally, which is called fault tolerance. Please note, this is not a default design by AWS. You will have to architect your applications in multiple availability zones to achieve high availability and fault tolerance. So students, I hope the availability zone is clear now. Let us now have a look at a sample architecture in which we will see how do we use availability zones to make our application highly available. Suppose in an AWS region, we have two availability zones that we will call availability zone 1 and availability zone 2. So the first thing we would do is launch an EC2 server and a corresponding database in the availability zone 1. Similarly, we would launch another web server and corresponding database in the availability zone 2. Now your application and database both are highly available and they can sustain if one zone goes down. Now students, in a nutshell, the AWS region is the geographic location across the globe, and the availability zone is the cluster of data centers in a particular region. Alright, so now let's move forward and understand why is there a need for so many regions today. Of course, it gives you the flexibility to deploy your application in any AWS region that is beneficial to you. Other than that, the main reason is the low latency access to applications. If your user base is in the US, deploying your application in the US only makes sense. Similarly, if you have your user base in India, you will choose the Mumbai region. The second reason is regulatory compliance. Different countries have different rules for regulating the data. Therefore, having multiple regions gives you liberty to choose what works best for you. The third reason is to sustain any types of disaster. All these AWS regions are across the globe and the minimum distance between any two regions should be 300 km, which we call as disaster recovery site. This is to make sure that your application runs in one of the sites and the other site should be at least 300 km apart to ensure that they are not a part of the same systems. Hence, you can also leverage the benefit of multiple regions. Apart from the latency requirement, regulatory compliance, and disaster recovery, there are some additional considerations that you can also look at while using multiple regions. For example, for the global application, organizations want to provide the best user experience to their users across the globe. One way to achieve that is by deploying your application in the region closer to your audiences. For example, a US based application will use Mumbai region to provide the Indian user a better experience. Cost is another benefit of using multiple regions. Since every country has a different economy, the pricing of using AWS would vary from country to country. Therefore, you will get cheaper services in some countries, and as an organization, that's a great way to save money. Next, you have a reduced blast radius. Many people and organizations want that in case a complete region goes down, they may want to leverage another region as disaster recovery. Many times they also distribute their workloads across the regions. In case something happens to one region, another region is active, and that's how they reduce the blast radius of the disaster. So, students, that was all about the AWS regions and availability zones. Make sure that you understand everything well as they are important from interview point of view. That's all for this video.